Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have the team from ADAC once again here joining us today, and we're going to be talking about social emotional learning. First and foremost, let's introduce the team. Tom Olson to start. I know you're joining us here today. I was looking for Steve, but I saw he wasn't in, so glad to have you. Could you tell us a little about who you are and what ADAC is as a whole?
Absolutely, Jill, and thanks for having us back yet again. We've very much enjoyed being with you for this series. Yes, my name is Tom Olson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and one of the co-founders of ADAC. And ADAC works in private and public schools, providing to schools and faculties support in building systems to serve all students. And we particularly focus in on professional development and instructional coaching for teachers as well. And we began in working in private schools, primarily Catholic schools, but we've since expanded, as I just mentioned, into the public school market as well. And in addition to that, we have a 501c3 organization called ADAC Advocacy Foundation, which works with private schools and private school leaders and networks throughout the country, helping them to attain for their students equitable participation in federal services, federally funded services under particularly IDEA as well as ESSA. So it's a pleasure for me to be with you once again this morning.
Well, thank you. And how can we reach out to you, to the foundation, to everything? Could you just share the contact links?
Absolutely. Our website's the best means by which to reach out to us, www.theadac.com. So that's THEADAC.com. That website, of course, is our private school website, which is linked to our public school website as well. And then the independent URL for the foundation for the 501c3 is www.theadacadvocacy.com. So that's the THEADAC.com.
Beautiful. And we're going to be introducing some of the team as well, an adjunct consultant to start off. Diana, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and how you're involved with ADAC.
Hi there, and good morning. Happy Monday. My name is Diana. I am a social emotional learning consultant for ADAC. In my background, I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner and longtime child and family therapist, working with schools and families and the villages that surround them to help support children with mental health needs to be successful, happy, and thriving.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for being here. And last but not least, Chris Cipriano, currently the principal of Notre Dame High School in Fairfield, Connecticut. Could you tell us a little bit more about you and what you bring to the table at ADAC?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me this morning, Jill. Good to see everybody. Yeah, as you said, Chris Cipriano, the principal at Notre Dame High School in Fairfield, Connecticut. I have spent my entire career here at ND and recently completed my doctoral studies with a focus in social and emotional learning. So I have been able to take some of my knowledge and some of my skills out on the road to support some schools and support ADAC's work and share with educators the important aspects and the important strategies that we could take to bring social and emotional learning into the classroom and to meet the ever-evolving needs of our students.
Beautiful. Well, I know today's topic is social emotional learning. So let's get started. And Chris, I'm going to ask you this first question. Are SEL, so again, social emotional learning issues, more prevalent in schools today?
Yeah, we're really seeing, especially on the other side of COVID, we are seeing the needs of our students, which I sort of alluded to in my own intro, really evolve and expand and grow. We're seeing more students with anxiety and depression, social issues, sadness, struggles that are impacting their ability to be fully successful in the classroom. And while these were all prevalent before we had ever heard of COVID, the learning loss and the gaps from learning at home have really just exacerbated the problem. So the simple answer is yes. We are certainly seeing the expanded needs and the issues all related in issues going back to SEL.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, can I ask you, Diana, a little bit about maybe the factors that are driving this increase in SEL issues in schools?
Absolutely. I think Chris hit the nail on the head in terms of COVID's effects on SEL, social emotional learning, and the effects on students and children these days. Even prior to COVID, the amount of mental health challenges and the prevalence of mental health challenges was on the rise, kind of in an exponential type of way. If you kind of look at a chart, it's really was exponential even prior to COVID. And then the line got a little bit steeper after COVID. And, I think some of the factors that played into that are the isolation. Pandemic was kind of a collective traumatic time for a lot of people, a lot of us just kind of over along across the globe. And I think for students in particular, there were a lot of things that they were missing out on that are key factors in maintaining mental health and developing properly as a child. In particular, thinking about the level of isolation that occurred during COVID. A huge part of developmental success for children and youth is that ability to be in interaction with one another, to learn those social skills, to flex those kind of social emotional learning muscles, as I like to say, to be able to be in situations where they have to learn empathy or they have to learn resilience or, have other things that can make a difference. And so I think COVID is a big factor. And we also know that social media is a big factor where it's a lot more information and resources coming out now about the effects of social media on the lives of our youth. And so, I think all of that kind of plays a role. And then, of course, just in general, as a society, we're becoming a little bit more and more fast-paced over time. And I think our students are really feeling that. Gone are the days where children are, kind of bored. We see a lot of overscheduling. We see a lot of children being worried about their future. And so they're involved in so many different activities, and their plates are a lot more full than I would say they were maybe 10, 15 years ago. And so that's really making a difference in terms of anxiety levels. And then, the other part is with COVID, there was a lot of grief, right? There was a lot of challenges across the board. We've lost family members. A lot of families were put into financial hardship and strain. And I think, there's more data coming out now that's showing the amount of kind of divorces and marriages that were kind of affected during the COVID era. So all of these different factors really play a role in, how our children are showing up to school every day and their ability to be resilient in their lives.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. And would you say, could you tell us a little bit how some of these SEL issues manifest themselves usually?
Yeah, so these SEL issues, they manifest in lots of different ways. I think the biggest way that they manifest for our students and for children is through their behaviors. Behaviors often tell us that something is going on. We may not
Yeah,
necessarily know exactly what it is, but the things that we can notice about our youth and our children are usually the indicators that let us know that we need to do a little more investigating into what's beneath the surface, right? And so we might start to see and notice that our youth are withdrawing more, or they're not enjoying things that they used to enjoy as much, or they're deciding to no longer participate in that sports activity that they used to love, or they're no longer being social and hanging out with their friends, or, different changes to things like eating patterns or sleeping patterns, right? And, as we grow up, as we make our way through adolescence and get to adulthood, all of these things kind of shift anyway,
yeah,
right? And so we're looking for those major shifts that make a huge difference in day-to-day life for our students and our youth, right? And that's
got
when we
it.
know that, okay, we need to be thinking about why these shifts are happening so that we can have very targeted and specific approaches to mitigating the challenges that our students are facing.
Got it. And Chris, do you want to shed some light on some of the common SEL issues that you are seeing?
Yeah, I think obviously anxiety and has just gone off the charts with students. And I'm sure Diana sees this in the clinical setting all the time. The number of students diagnosed with depression, whether it's mild or severe, it's just education is a whole different ball game now than it was even just 10 years ago. And we're talking about the impacts of COVID, but as Diana said, that evolution was already happening even before COVID struck, before the pandemic arrived. So we are just seeing that, again, to use the phrase, that exponential
Yeah.
growth. Students with anxiety, depression, the mental health needs are really much greater than they ever were before. And that's, and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit. That's a challenge for educators too,
Yeah.
and parents. And it's a whole different ballgame in the world of education these days. And a lot of it is driven by the ever evolving and expanding mental health needs of our students.
Got it. I know, Dana, you touched on this a little bit about the manifestation, but is there any other advice on you think the best way that schools can really address these manifestations in a sense, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's really important for our schools to have the supports to be able to address what our students need. So that comes in the forms of making sure we have the staff in place. We need Dianas in all of our schools right now. We need trained social workers, in psychiatrists who can support our students on the mental health needs. We need to support our counselors. Our counselors, our guidance counselors, are those frontline folks. They need to be able to recognize when an outside referral is necessary, and how they can best support students in their offices. Our teachers need the support. They need the professional development. If you've been in education for 15 or 20 years, you weren't trained in all of this when you were going through your teacher preparation programs. But now this is what you're dealing with on a daily basis. And we need to make sure that our teachers are given the support and the training, not only for specific strategies they can use in their own classrooms, whether it's a mindfulness practice or anything to help ground the kids and help to get them
Yeah.
focused so that they're in the right mindset to learn, but also what bigger programs can we bring in school wide? A program like the Ruler program out of Yale, where we're training our kids to recognize and regulate their own emotions, because being able to recognize when you're struggling is that first step in the process. So yeah, as educators, we need to be able to provide those on the front lines, those in the classrooms, those in the offices supporting students. We need to provide them with the skills and the strategies for them to be successful so that their students can be successful as a result.
Right. Anyone want to add to that?
I think Chris really nailed it. I think, because it's a completely different ball game, we really need to embrace that and accept it, and then put in uh, the right things to kind of mitigate the challenges. And everyone needs support, right? We're
Yeah.
talking specifically about the students, but in order for the students to get the right amount of support, then the adults around them need to feel supported and well equipped, and have the necessary knowledge that they need to step in and do the right things at the right time. So.
Got it. Well,
I
would you say, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jill. I think it's important too that it's a team approach, that it's not just one person in a building is going to be a social emotional coordinator and they're going to handle everything for everyone. It's important that the entire school community is on board when you're trying to tackle this real issue that we face every day. And it's important too that we partner with parents. Parents need to be part of the conversation. Parents need to be part of the solution. They're their child's first educators. They need to be part of the process and support all of this at home as well. Because if everybody's not on board, if everybody's not supporting this collectively, then we're not going to be successful in our efforts.
Got it. All right. Would you say that families are typically willing to collaborate with school leaders and teachers to address their children's SEL issues?
Yeah, I'll take that first from the school perspective, and then Diana could certainly take it from a
Sure.
clinical perspective. I think parents are looking for guidance. Again, there's no parenting classes that give you lessons on how to support your child when they're anxious at home or they're showing some signs of depression. Parents are looking for the resources and the supports to be able to provide for their own kids. So yeah, I think parents are looking for the help and are willing to collaborate. But it comes down to, you don't know what you don't know sometimes. So we need to make sure parents are aware of the resources. Parents are aware of the tools that they can use at home. But sometimes we need to bring this to them as directly as possible. They're willing, but we need to let them know that these resources and these opportunities are available.
Got it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Chris. And I think oftentimes parents and families find ways to, and sometimes maladaptive ways to deal with the mental health challenges at home, right? But then once they start to kind of spill over into school and into other settings, I think that oftentimes is a wake-up call for a lot of parents and for a lot of families that, okay, we really need to figure something out here and work collaboratively so that we can make sure to mitigate all of these challenges across settings because we really want our child to be successful. We want them to be happy. We don't want them to be struggling, right? And it's one thing for the struggle to be noticed at home, right? And like I said, a lot of times families will make adjustments as needed at home, and they don't even realize that some of the adjustments they're making may in fact be exacerbating some of those challenges, right? Like, we're talking about anxiety, for an example. One of the biggest things about anxiety is students will or youth will tend to avoid the activities that make them anxious, right? And a well-meaning parent might help them to avoid those activities and settings to help mitigate that anxiety in the moment. But over time, we know from a clinical perspective that that avoidance actually feeds the anxiety, right? And so, talking about school, and oftentimes with anxiety comes that school avoidance, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you're seeing some of that, Chris. But working with parents to give them the education, right? Because this isn't knowledge that's readily available, making sure that they know how the things that they're doing are helping or potentially hurting their child and flying in the face of some of the goals that they have as a family is really helpful. And I find that most parents are pretty receptive to that and want to do whatever it takes to help their child to become better.
Got it. Well, Chris, let me ask you, how important would you say is self-care for parents as well as educators?
Hugely important. You can't take care of others if you're not
Yeah.
taking care of yourself. It's sort of like the if the oxygen mask drops on the airplane,
Yeah.
put it on first and then take care of the person next to you. If you are not taking care of yourself with good exercise and diet and all of the things that we are told that we need to do to be in a good spot for with our own mental health, it's impossible to do it for others. And I look at it, let's just take it from the educator perspective. Teaching is an extremely stressful occupation, let alone adding on all the mental health pieces that we're talking about today.
Hmm.
So, this high burnout field, which is so critical to our society of making sure that we have great educators giving our kids the education that they need, if we're not encouraging our teachers to take care of themselves and doing what they need to be successful personally, it's impossible for them to take care of kids. So I tell my own teachers, listen, I don't expect you to be responding to emails at 8 and 9 o'clock at night. That does you no good. Well,
Yeah.
that parent expectation may be out there that you're going to get an immediate response back from an email. That's impossible. It's impossible to do. And yet I still have teachers, honestly, I still have teachers who do that. And from a functional perspective, that's great. It's good to have good communication with your parents, but being on your work email at 8 and 9 o'clock at night isn't doing you any good. And I encourage my teachers to take that time for themselves, to put the phone down, to stay off social media. That's a stressful thing when we hop on social media today, looking what's going on in our world, and to find those opportunities to rest and recharge. Because when they recharge, whether it's a 5 minute mindfulness exercise, whether it's a 30-minute jog, whether it's sitting and reading for an hour, whatever does it for you that allows you to rest, recharge, and rejuvenate, it's critical that you do that for yourself, because otherwise you can't do it for others. It's just you don't have the space, you don't have the energy to be able to do it for others. And our kids need it. Our kids need your attention today as a teacher in the classroom, whether you're teaching kindergarten or seniors in high school. The kids need your attention, and they're going to demand it, and they're going to want it. And if you can give it to them, the only way you're going to be able to do it is when you're in a good space yourself.
Yeah,
Well, good. You can piggyback on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, no, I was just gonna say, the other key piece to all of this, I think self-care, in addition to what Chris has said, is that it's a practice, right? I think oftentimes self-care is a reaction to being in a stressful state, and we're, kind of doing it after the fact, right? But if we incorporate self-care and make it a practice, that it's something that we're doing regularly, not just in response to stress, it can make a huge difference. And one of the biggest things that we can do as adults helping youth and children is to model for them what it looks like to deal with stress effectively. So if we're doing the right things to help ourselves to manage the stress, our youth are going to see that, and it's going to be a lot easier for them to then also feel empowered to do the same.
Hello, hello. I hit the
Oh,
wrong button. There it goes. I'm like, why can't I hear myself? I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. My apologies. Well, I know we just touched upon the self-care for everyone, and that's just a huge thing, I think, for everyone in general today. So it's good to hear that, yeah, clearly for parents and educators as well. But what about some general advice maybe for parents who have children who are or maybe dealing with SEL challenges? Is there anything that you want to add? Of course, for them. I mean, I'm sure they could use as much advice as possible for sure.
Go ahead, Diana. I'll let you start.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is that, like Chris said, and we know the phrase "it takes a village," right? And I think oftentimes people feel very alone and isolated when it comes to mental health challenges, right? There's a lot of stigma that is associated with mental health challenges still to this day, even though it's so prevalent. There's a statistic out there that just recently came out that 55% of working parents have a child at home dealing with mental health challenges. So that's more than half the parents in the workforce, right, that are dealing with this. And there's so many domino effects. And so, I think the biggest thing that I would impart, that I continue to impart onto parents that I'm working with, is that you're not alone, that there are others who are dealing with similar challenges, and that they should not be afraid to ask for help, and to seek guidance. And so, finding a trusted person in your life, whether that's your child's pediatrician or a school administrator or a counselor, that, helped a family down the street, whatever the case may be, asking for advice and guidance is probably one of the best things that you can do. Unfortunately, there's no great Google search for mental health challenges, right?
Right.
Google certain things, like, it's the same as when you Google if you have a headache, right? It's all doom and gloom. You think maybe you have a week left to live, unfortunately, right? If you Google that. And so sometimes the information on the internet isn't going to be as encouraging, but I would just say, seeking out those members of your community that you can rely on to ask for information and advice. And then the other thing is, it can be a really challenging emotional aspect to a lot of it for parents, right? There's a sense of kind of grief that comes from it, right? Nobody likes to know that something challenging is happening with their child. And so at the same time that they're trying to find support and resources for their child, they're also dealing with the mixed emotions that they may be feeling. And so I would say, there's tons of parent groups out there that are available, to help support families who are going through that, so that you don't feel so alone. And then, I think the other key piece too is that, for parents and for families, that I always say is that, you don't have to go with the first provider that you're recommended with, right? You should feel empowered to be interviewing people and getting a sense for whether or not the person that you're looking to work with to help you and your child or your family to overcome these challenges is a good fit. And, I think oftentimes people feel kind of lost in the wind, right? Because it's such a challenging situation. But I like to empower families and parents to be an active participant in their child's treatment and recovery journey, because at the end of the day, parents are the experts, right? They've been there since the
Yeah.
beginning. And they have all the information that a provider like myself might need in order to make the proper decisions. So.
Beautifully said. Well, we're out of time. We just have a minute left. So just to kind of sum it up for today, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Jill, I think it is so important that everybody tackles this issue together. It is a real issue in all of our classrooms and all of our schools in life today. And when we partner together to make the social and the emotional learning opportunities stronger for our students,
Mm-hmm.
they're the true beneficiaries of that. And that's what we're all seeking to do in the world of education.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for being here today. Thank you for this amazing podcast series and teaching us so much about your mission. Again, helping K through 12 educators, really meet all the learning needs of their students. And for ADAC, the website, please reach out. Go to theadac.com. And thank you all today for being here once again.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
you.
Have a great day. And to all of our listeners, please stay tuned. More of the show is coming right up. Have a great day.
1 in 5 children in the United States have learning differences, making it more challenging than ever to be a teacher or school leader. At ADAC, we empower K-12 educators to meet the learning needs of all students through customized professional development and coaching services. Learn more at www.theadac.com. That's THEADAC.com.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.